So he's still got,
It's
you know, a
important here.
good year
Yep.
of rehab
That's all we
to do.
do.
But
Right,
he's
yeah, and there's a lot of,
pretty likely to
lot
be
more
able to ride
human,
bike
a lot
again
more
this
traffic,
summer
and
and
Yeah.
be a little bit.
safe route, at least in the summers. In the winter, not that.
So-
many people are walking.
Would have been dead.
Yeah.
And well, they'll be able to use it so long as depending on how busy it goes. I'm excited.
Yeah.
Are we ready? Can we get a roll call going? Okay, Parks Thompson,
Katie Souls.
Steve Fitzgerald.
Greg Beckler.
Nick, can you hear us?
Yes, I can. Sorry about that. Having some technical stuff on my end.
Okay, else out there.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yes.
Great.
Okay, cool.
Good morning, Nick.
Good morning.
anybody else online?
That's it for the committee.
Okay, good.
I think we have just enough. All right. Can we get a movement to approve the agenda?
I move to approve the agenda.
Seconded.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Make movement to approve the consent agenda. Is that right?
Yes.
I wasn't here at the last meeting.
Nor was I. So
Were you thinking?
Nor was I.
Okay, so,
Nick,
Nick, did
I
you?
move to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Internet, and I did review the minutes.
Oh, good.
They look good.
All right, cool. All right, so we have an open forum. Does anybody have anything to discuss today other than what's on the agenda? I don't see anybody. Anybody online? No? Awesome. So we have a discussion and possible action here of sculpture and signage ideas with John Henley. If John, you'd like to step up and we could ask some questions to John. It's about the bike park sculpture and then maybe sculptures of the over by the train station. Is that right?
Yeah, so just to provide a little background context, we've been talking about possible different district enhancements that the DDA could use with the kind of amount of funding we have now. So throughout this year, we've kind of talked about different ideas. Monument signs is one that's been popped up. I know there's interest from Fraser Valley Arts for that one as well. There's interest from the town and the mayor. We've kind of been waiting on wayfinding and CDOT, although the reality is CDOT, that project, I think we're looking at possibly a decade. Maybe I'm overstating that, but it looks like they are looking currently, correct me if I'm wrong on any of this, Garrett, to go from kind of Rendezvous Road to Clayton Drive. Is that Avenue? It's the one that actually comes out where HTA is as a first phase, and they have money to design that. And I think that is supposed to be a year or two before they would construct that, and then they would kind of design from Clayton Court past maybe to County Road 8 or 5.
Okay.
So from there to 5 would be phase 2.
So we should have a design within a year or two that we could at least work off of for things like this, and we could talk to them about some of those monument signs. As we know, there's an ongoing town comprehensive plan, and then there's also a wayfinding study plan that the town has been doing in conjunction with Winter Park and Winter Park Resort. So we've had a few things that kind of feel like we're in a holding pattern. But one of the ideas that popped up was with the increase in rail traffic, both with the ski train that expanded its service this past winter, and I believe that expanded service is continuing into this winter. And then they're also starting just daily, yearly passenger service in addition to the ski train that would come up from Denver. I believe it stops at the resort as well. Don't quote me on that part, but then Fraser and Granby, and then would go back that day. Of looking to do something to kind of spruce up just when you get off the train or you're just looking out the window, something to kind of better announce Fraser and kind of speak to Fraser's identity, maybe pique people's interest as a place to stop. So looking at possibly whether it be wayfinding or more, we kind of were looking at something maybe more sculpture / welcome sign that maybe kind of had a little bit of character, Fraser's character to it, as something that possibly we could look at doing that I don't feel like necessarily has to be in one of those holding patterns. But that was one idea. John had also shared with me a sculpture of a bike that he had done for another bike park that didn't come to be. If we wanted to have some sort of kind of monument sign up by the, in my head, it would be up kind of either on the parking lot or that frontage road once the bike park was built. You know, again, as kind of a welcome to Fraser, something that kind of speaks to Fraser's identity, but kind of specific to the bike park. So just some different ideas. I think ultimately we would want to put a call out, as Steve brought up to artists, but thought we could just flush through some ideas. You guys could give John some feedback on the initial kind of sketch that he provided, and then we could go from there if that's something the DDA wanted to move forward. So we'll talk about that. We have John here for that piece, and then we were going to circle back to some of the town comprehensive plans again, kind of at a higher level, just some ideas and thoughts looking further down the road. And then we can kind of just touch base on where we're at with our budget. We have not spent most of it, and our work plan, and just kind of start to maybe make some decisions moving forward. Some of this I think will help inform our budget for next year, which is closer than I would like it to be, because I think that we're going to be looking at, or we will be looking at that as we're wrapping up the summer, early fall, so that we can work with the town's budget cycle as the Board of Trustees does need to approve that. So I think we can kind of hash through some of these ideas in terms of what this year's pot of money, as well as beginning to look at kind of next year's pot of money and what we might be able to present to the Board of Trustees. It was pretty general this past year, and I think we can still keep it fairly general. I think this is going to continue to evolve with different opportunities and things like that that present themselves. And as we have smaller pots of money, but can maybe have something a little more concrete that we're at least thinking about when we talk about things like community engagement and district enhancements for next year. So that's where we're at. And yeah, the last time we talked about this, I did show you guys a sketch that John had provided that people seemed to like, but thought it'd be great to have him here and just kind of talk back and forth and give feedback directly.
Great. Thanks for coming, John.
Well, you're welcome. Thank you for having me. So, a little bit about me for if people don't know who I am or what I do. So I've been a sculptural artist, as a photographer for that, but I've been a sculptural artist for going on 25 years. So that's one side of my life. Another side of my life is that I actually also function in a design and fabrication shop studio, as well. I have been involved in public arts projects in one form or another going back, oh good Lord, 20 years in Denver at least. I did some of the work around the Denver bike path initiatives. I did some stuff with T-Rex back in the day. If it looks like there is a video link on me, if you can see, the problem with being my age is that I can say that it doesn't seem plausible, but then you have to have the amount of years that I've been doing these types of things. So then it becomes, so I have a couple of functions. And one thing, I do work with municipalities both via the call processes that go out for bids and things like that, competing on public art projects. I also do some consultancy along that as well. The first thing I want to say to this group and to any of the public that may be listening is you guys have no idea how far ahead you are in Grand County of all the other municipalities around.
Huh.
The things
He's
that
just stoking us.
no, I mean, there's a few people who know me in this room, and I don't
Yeah,
blow
that's not
smoke
prone
very
to
well.
that.
Okay, so I have no filter. I have no reason to kiss up to anybody.
Perfect. Thank you.
And it is just really great to see the reinvestment
Thank you.
So
We'll
it's-
take it.
yeah, I mean,
We'll take it.
your neighbor down the street, you would think has more revenue, but there's less that happens. That's all I can say. So that's that. So, I don't know what you guys want to talk about. I
Can we
I
s-
am here to go on any of these subjects, from a consultancy spec or some of the ideas that we talked about with the landing. I'm really here for you. This is,
Can we start with what your ideas are behind this sculpture and what it takes to kind of build something like this budget wise for someone like you versus maybe another artist, outside of our
Sure.
town?
so I think one of the things that, and I don't know that, I view this as signage. More than I view this, would say that what I have, the SketchUp that I have, I took some feedback from Sarah, what to put in there. I thought about my own travels, throughout the world that I've done. And I think one of the advantage or such here is that I do run a fabrication shop myself versus a lot of people when you talk about large scale sculpture and public sculpture. So what I do is considered monumental sculpture. A lot of the people aren't fabbing it themselves. They aren't building it themselves. So Parks, the point that I'm making is it's a one-stop shop. So I'm actually building it. I'm not, there's not a markup, so to speak, to a fabrication shop that's going out. Do I make a profit? You better believe I do. But it's not, I mean, things that are too large for me, I've got partners that I've been working with for 25 years that it might as well be my shop. So I think from a budgetary perspective, I'm usually able to be a little bit more cost conscious than others. My philosophy in my own personal art space, I use a bridge analogy a lot. You can sell one sculpture a year or one every 3 years, or you can sell 20 or 30 and make a lot more people happy. And I try and keep that price point much more relative. So I look at things like this from a budgetary perspective. First off, what is going to be functional? What is going to be low maintenance? And what is going to be liability proof? And I think those are three things that come from my experience, are that don't get thought of a lot. People look at aesthetics more than anything. And then the other thing I do is I'm a very generic, abstract guy. It's very hard to have political or why did they spend money on that or what does it do, right? I don't get into ethereal concepts on public works. It doesn't work. So from a budgetary perspective, I don't know if that answers the question, but I really follow the KISS principle. I really try and look at it from a fabrication point of view and then bring in the artistic side of it. And what I would say more, I don't like cities and towns that use the term art. I'd rather look at it from an aesthetic and beautification perspective. That's how I tend to look at it.
So I like the idea of this piece. And if we're looking at just feedback on it and questions, so thinking about no maintenance, if the symbols, if they were directing people towards ski trails or restrooms or certain things, and even the spaceship on top, cut into the steel so that you don't have to worry about the paint ever peeling or fading, which is something that happens here big time.
I have two things for that. So let me explain what the concept, and I didn't do an animation on this because I didn't know where we were and how we were looking at this. So I think we have established that this is not necessarily an art project, but it's more of a public works
Direct
signage thing, right?
Catch their eye, yeah.
Right, okay. So the idea here, and I'll use my mouse cursor. So the idea is that this upper piece are just signs of, and they're all, I love the idea of using the international symbols. I think the international symbols, one, never go out of style.
Ever.
They're kind of funny and they're simple.
We have people getting off the train from all over. the world.
Exactly. So this whole piece up here spins. So that whole piece there is set upon thrust bearings that would spin with the wind, which we get a good amount of. But it would not be a super fast rotation. It's steel. Okay. And even if we do switch it over to aluminum, it's not going to spin fast. If we can make it out of stainless, this is the thing. You guys get to say what you like or what you don't like, right? But the idea is for this to move. So, there's a symbol for mountain bike. There's a symbol for, for road bike. There's a symbol, you can put a fish on there, right? There can be a cowboy hat in there. There could be a horse. There could be whatever that one, people want to put in. That moves. Now, it can be powder coated. So here's the thing. We got a lot of UV. But if you're going to powder coat it a simple color, powder coat it something that then acts as a base for recoat,
Subsequent.
respray,
Yeah.
respray, whatever,
Yeah.
right? That can be
What does
redone.
powder coat mean? What
It-
I
it-
don't
It's
understand.
coloring. It's like a color.
It is a
Your
heat-based
rims.
dry paint. So all it is an enamel.
All right.
But what it has done, it has no liquid. So it's electrostatically applied to metal. And then it is baked at 400-degree core temperature. And you've heard like baked enamel, you've heard things like that. It's similar to that.
Hmm.
It has superior chip abrasion cut resistance. It takes special coatings to have it have more UV. Liquid paint can have more UV, but truth is, this is at 9,000 feet. It's all gonna wear.
I mean, I really like the idea of not having a bright color personally, just because I think it's more in the town. It looks better in this town. Like if you go places, they're really looking at reclaimed materials. They're doing like rust metal siding, I think it has more of like a historical feel versus like this bright yellow or bright orange pole, What I do like about this sign, I'll tell you, is that it kind of reminds me of something you might see on one of the Continental Divide trails up there saying
Yeah.
Diamond Lake, and this way is that and this way is that. If it's spinning, which
Here's
is
the
a
top
cool
one.
idea, then it has no real directional value, which I think if we're just labeling that there's skiing, hiking, horseback riding, biking, fishing, then that's fine.
I like
If it's pointing to the river with the fishing symbol and pointing towards St. Louis Creek with the biking, then it really does have to be thought about more with where they're being,
Yeah,
where
I
they're
just
being
think at a
welded.
practical level, that's really hard.
It's
I
too
mean,
hard,
'cause
yeah.
You've got trails all over the place.
That's what I'm
right?
saying,
You've got fishing
yeah.
opportunities all over the place. So I think it's more symbolic.
I think
Well,
so.
The
Yeah.
I think it's important to I view this as more of like an abstract, cool piece of art, and then have the wayfinding like placards for businesses.
Yeah.
Maybe point out
That's part of the
hiking.
signage.
That's
That's part of the
separate from
wayfind, yeah.
this, but like,
Yeah.
where's like if this were at the train station, I could see people taking pictures with
Right.
this, and then okay, it's spinning around. All right, where do I go? Oh, on that street corner, there's brewery, bar, river. On that street corner, there's whatever.
Meant to pique your interest.
Yeah.
Right.
And if I could build on that, when I saw this, I wasn't here last week, but I saw the image and was thinking about John's work in it that I know well. I love it because it's consistent with the brand that we're building for the town. What I would hate to see us do is another just one-off project. And what I mean by that is, to me, it should be part of a broader branding strategy, which we already have.
Correct.
And I look at something like this as one of many other things that are complementary to it. So, for example, that Nordic skiing symbol, we would replicate that everywhere else in town where there's Nordic skiing, right?
Mhm.
Fishing, mountain biking,
I like
same
that.
thing. So you build that over time. You have a display at the train station where it's organized using these symbols, and people can pick up a brochure of where to go skiing, where to go mountain biking, where to go fishing,
And that's
and
the,
it just builds itself.
that's why I
That
picked
way, it's
the,
the comprehensive message. And forgive me, John, just let me finish this thought. Things like our sculpture program through the Public Arts Committee, we then put a call for entry out for sculpture that are consistent with this brand. And so everything the town is doing for the next few years is building the brand that we have committed to, and we're getting a strong, powerful message. Sorry.
no, that was the idea behind the international symbols. And, you know, the whole idea with, like you said, there are some really cute ones. I mean, there are some really funny, cute ones, right? But using the international symbols, it's simple, it's easy. And, you know, I do agree that when Sarah came to me with like, hey, we have thought for this, she'll tell you that she originally was looking at this through a sculptural lens, or having a piece of art there. And you know, that's not where,
With
if
a
I'm,
welcome sign.
yeah, that my thought was, well, no, I think you need to look at a kiosk here. I think you need to look at, you know, you either need to do an informational kiosk, right, that has your stuff, like a scanning barcode that you can go up and say, okay, where do I get stoned? Where do I get a beer? Where do I get this? You know,
Right.
but that's one side. That's one, I think. Or you have something that when people get off the train, they go, well, that's kind of cool. And, you know, like you said, you know, maybe they're going to take a picture. Hey, I'm in Fraser. They're going to stand next to the, to the lettering. So just to run through this, and this is an idea, right?
Yeah.
So there's two ways I work. One, you can pay me a consultancy fee and I can tell you what to do, and then you don't have a product, right? The other way I work is, hey, we do this as it's part and parcel of the budgeting area, right? So there was an open question, how much does this cost, or this type of thing cost, right? So on the Fraser lettering, this lettering was something that I can't use this font. It's a real generic, simple Microsoft style font, right? But I think it works really well. And my thought with that is, if parks, you were talking about doing a rusted or patina thing, I'm going to say this to anybody in earshot: do not spend the money on Core 10 steel. Okay.
On what?
Core
Write
10,
this
what a
down.
type of steel called Core 10. Okay. So it's what everybody in the art world and everybody wants to do, say, hey, this is cool. It's Core 10. Great. Core 10 never finishes rusting. It runs. It never looks uniform. Regular steel,
Thank you.
I can take, again, got a lot of experience with it, but I can take it, media blast it, apply different acid washes to it. It's instantly rusted, and it's almost done rusting forever. So you won't get a lot of stainage on concrete. Okay. What's not drawn into this is this needs to have a hunk of concrete underneath it. Okay. Probably 2 yards. Okay.
We do concrete. Town does concrete.
I understand. I'm just covering the bases.
Yes.
So, you know, and I would do a round piece, scale wise. It's whatever we make the base. The base has got to be probably 30 inches to be physical. There would be some bracing in this, you know, like a light pole. Think light pole, right? There'd be some little triangles around the bottom.
Sure.
There'd be a base, and then there need to be probably 4-foot diameter concrete, probably 18 inches, right? What you guys have to decide is if you want this flush or not, right? You know, flush to the ground, a couple inches up, because the littlest lip will people will look at the littlest lip and go, I'm not supposed to go near it, right? I'm not supposed to take my picture. But if it's flush down on the ground, And then we make the signage high enough that someone my size or Steve's size or, somebody else can't come up and,
Yeah, knock it.
give it a whirl, right? We can't prevent what I like to call here in the ski towns, the drunken idiot syndrome. We can't prevent that entirely, but we can make it harder for somebody to do that. I would like to see that lettering be done in stainless. Okay. I can join stainless to regular steel. I can't join aluminum without it being bonded, electrochemically bonded, screwed, fastened, whatever. Right. And that way, and I would like you to think about maybe having the Leaving Planet Earth spaceship, having that top part be stainless too. And I can do some color renderings of this type of thing and come up. I think the base of that needs to be pretty good and wide, 18 inches or so. And that's really all I've got for it.
So just how much are we branding the spaceship here in Fraser? How committed? Where is
In
it
terms of
going? How
going with the
everywhere? Yeah,
plan.
is it everywhere like in the future?
I
Is that what we're seeing on all signs?
perception has been since I started here 2 years ago that there are some people looking to grow up and mature and move on, but that there's a lot of people that really like it. And so, correct me if I'm wrong. My impression has been that the official branding is not built around leaving planet Earth, but that is still something very much. I mean, Sarah still makes stickers every year
Sure.
and we, put it on swag that we give away, that it's not going away, that we're kind of in
Yeah.
tandem creating a more
The word,
sophisticated branding, but that's still sticking around.
because the words leaving planet Earth to me just means that we're just above all else around us. We're high up, we're elevated.
We're high up, it's
So
spectacular.
does that mean that we're like, Area 51 or like you drive through Nevada and you see spaceships everywhere? Like, because that's personally coming from Fraser, it's the last thing I want to see. I don't want to see.
But that comes back to exactly my point earlier is, this needs, and
Yeah.
we can pick apart what's on each element.
Yeah.
This needs to be consistent with
100%.
what Darrowick's marketing strategy is for the town, and we just build that in, right?
Right. Because leaving planet Earth is a great term, but if it's taken too literal and it's like, we're and we have spaceships on everything, is that really even branding anything in Fraser or this town?
I think for the purposes of this sign, I agree with you. I think for the purposes of this, I don't mind it because it's like
Yeah.
everything's moving. Here's where everything is, and then go down
It's
for
one of
It's like one of multiple.
identity
It's not the
symbols.
focal point for me on this. I think like the movement and scale will be the impressive piece, not exactly what's on top. But I love have you thought about where this would go, or have you guys thought about
Right next to the fire hydrant.
Yeah, so let me steal your screen share real quick and I can show you.
Cause like, I'm just thinking like the town's gonna do, the DDA is not gonna fund the placards with what businesses or where. That's a town project, right?
Yes, I mean, it's something that the DDA could play a
Yeah,
role
this-
in the future, but that is an ongoing, we're hoping to have some direction, I believe, kind of by this fall.
Uh-huh.
And then it will be up to the towns, the governing body of the Sustainable Communities Group, that's basically Winter Park, Fraser, and the resort, to kind of determine where they want to prioritize and spend money first.
Cause I think it would be cool if we had something like this, however many arms it has. And then once you're and then you have I call them placards, but like pointing to the businesses and giving more concrete directions on street corners.
Yeah.
But then when you get to that location or bike trail or whatever, have another maybe fixed version of this that's
Amen.
more simplified just
Yep.
for that
Yep.
bike trail, just for that fishing.
100%.
I think that'd be dope.
And if you
It'd
put
be
a
super
QR
cool.
code on there
Yeah.
that doesn't change over time,
Yeah.
then every mountain biker out there who gets to, the Northwest Passage can take that and they go, oh, now I know where all the rest of them are.
And like we could get something like this going with the QR code on this, in a brass
Right.
QR code, whatever, like they have for the murals in Denver.
Yep.
And that just takes you to whatever map Sarah's already got created for businesses or like how to get around, because people will go straight towards that
100%.
and we don't have to wait on this.
Yep, and
sign
that way,
thing
no
to
matter
come
where
to
you go in
fruition.
town, you get this notion that, oh, that QR code takes me to the town's hub of
Yeah.
activities and information,
Yeah,
and it builds on itself.
yeah, that'd be dope.
So if you're looking from the train platform, this is kind of what you see. So the idea was kind of over here. We have to make sure we don't block the fire hydrant.
And you don't want it to stick into the road either, right?
We don't
So
want
you
the
could
plow to
light it.
take it out.
Yeah.
And the chief just said it just has to, it can, just so you can hook the hoses up.
Okay.
So it's placed between the two hose outlets.
There is this nice
Thank
little
you.
tree that has grown some, which I was like, oh, that might not be the most ideal because I would hate to ever take out a tree, but
That's all right.
you think
We got a
there's
lot.
plenty of room.
No, we got a lot of
Yeah,
trees.
it's-
We got a
yeah.
lot of trees.
Yeah, it's probably an Aspen volunteer from the.
And there is part of this is town. It's in the easement right away, and then part of this belongs to its property owner. But I think in terms of staying away from the hydrant, we would be out here.
Mhm.
So, and speaking to that point, Sarah, so the concrete can go on the ground. It can be level. The footprint of this thing, that for all intents and purposes is 30 inches or so in diameter. That's the usable footprint,
Okay.
right? The rest is, the height. What I would ask somebody to take a note to think about is, what is the setback ruling for that, right? So if it's impeding, because you got one or two homeowners there, right? You want to make sure that you're not, that there's, make sure that they're appeased, that they're happy,
Yeah.
right? Putting that in. But again, with this designer, with this thing that's there, I'm an abstract minimalist. That's what this is. This is minimal, right? And scale can be changed, but I think and then get rid of all that juniper,
Yes.
low maintenance crushed granite, right?
Because you want people to walk up to it and take photos.
Right.
Right. So you don't want
Exactly.
jumping over juniper.
And the crushed
That's right.
granite, right? And the
Yeah.
crushed granite doesn't do anything with the infrastructure for the fire hydrant in the town, public works infrastructure, right? The only thing is, you just got to make sure that we have enough weight for the concrete placement and how far down we can go for that, right? Because you're not going to have to do if you code this is more free work.
Did you say it was 18 inches deep concrete? Sorry.
It depends on the engineering.
Okay.
So if this gets coded as a sign, which it probably would, right? There will be a requirement for an engineering stamp, right? For the wind resistance, all the other stuff like that. So that's a couple of grand to put into the budget, right? Engineers, I know I'm a recovering engineer. You do not get out of bed for $2,000 to $5,000.
Uh-huh.
So that'll have to be from a signage perspective or a freestanding sign.
Mhm.
So we just have to make sure, they'll just going to say that they just need to have so much weight at the bottom for it to anchor to prevent shear. With it being a rotational thing, that'll take off from that. I'm making it sound worse than it is. It's just, plan on a couple yards of concrete, which is,
We do this with sculptures all the time.
yeah, but the difference, Steve, sculpture does not require an engineering stamp.
A couple of the ones I think that we have installed did.
Yeah,
So I
usually,
think our public works team.
yeah.
has some
So
experience.
but if it's signage, one of the differences is there are a whole new set of codes this
Gotcha.
last year that are really getting with signage.
Yeah, I can
right?
see it being a gray area where you go from,
Yeah.
but we'll talk with our town planner.
And this is, so I'm throwing up some little things here
That's good.
that I hope you're picking up on my hint. If it's sculptural, that's one thing, right? If it's signage, it's another. So the more you put
So I
on
wanted
it,
a sculpture.
if the more you put on it to be wayfinding, the more you can't pass the red face test saying to the county and to the state that it's a sculpture. Do you follow me?
It just represents wayfinding. That's all in different spots. So it's not a real sign.
Just activity.
It's just saying,
And again-
like Steve said, those symbols can be used for wayfinding around the town, but this is not that. It's just
This is
represent.
fitting their-
This is what we have here,
Yeah.
biking.
Exactly.
Look at us, right? But
Does-
then also, if you want people to take pictures in front of it, I think there needs to be, if there's no juniper, there's crushed granite, stuff like that, you need to make it inviting and maybe put some sort of like, you know, seating ledge, type deal, like blocks, like cube type seating blocks around it so people can sit down, take pictures, whatever. I think it needs to be more inviting than just
That can be part of the concrete.
the pole next
The-
to the
It can be steel too. But
Yeah.
Steel gets warm, but
Yeah.
but something that goes in.
something
there.
like
I
that,
think that-
like there's some blocks, cubes standing around the sculpture
Yeah.
that you can, and it also kind of tells, it for like this, like in the winter when there's snow, it's like it's protecting it as well,
Does, is anyone concerned that there's no sidewalk
Yeah.
on that corner, no crosswalk?
Which,
Mm-hmm.
I was
Yeah,
looking
there's
across
like
this.
sidewalk, but
That
it's over
dead ends,
here.
I think this is
That's a
Right.
private sidewalk that dead ends, I think. Cause does the town have in that easement space or the ability to do a sidewalk behind parking that continues? Or is there plans for when we had that CDOT permit that probably there's no plans for now? Was there plans for sidewalks on State Drive by side? Is that part of the comp plan?
I mean,
I think it's just the drainage plan on the side.
Yeah, that's a drain plan, and the sidewalk's on the right.
The sidewalk on the right dead ends at the end of that.
Mm-hmm.
do we
I don't
only
think
own the
there's-
median there, or is it like in between the sidewalk and the median where that dirt patch is that owned by
I think
us
that's
too?
Shauna's.
Or is it Shauna's?
Yeah,
Should we
so-
be going this deep
Yeah,
into
no.
the sculpture
was
and
gonna say-
innovation and all that? Seems to me that that's the next step. The
Yeah.
step we should be on is, does it fit the brand? Does it fit what we want to do? Do we want to spend the money?
I would say yes.
Yeah.
So the one other thing to back up to your point that you just brought up there. So you addressed with the spaceship, right?
Yeah.
So I would like to give you an objective, unsolicited opinion upon that. So I actually went around and talked to a whole bunch of people. Okay? Because I'm like, do we really, I mean, with the and again, I'm not blowing smoke here, with the new downtown area, right? With the new thing, with the building up, right? That does anybody who's a now permanent homeowner or second homeowner even know where that comes from, right? Do they even understand it, right? So my idea with having this, and it can be any size, but the idea with me putting the spaceship was to pay homage to that, right? To have that be for the old time locals, or this is cute, or what it is. But I tried to think of it like Amazon being a bookseller. Because I'm old enough to remember when Bezos started the whole thing, right? And his thing was, it's not related at all. What does it mean? I don't know. His actual idea was it's a jungle out there. That was his actual idea, was it was a jungle. But if, to your point, that was the only reason I had the spaceship on there, was it puts homage to it. And you know what? It's real easy. If we're talking natural steel with no powder coat, no anything else, you get up there with a plasma cutter or with a grinding wheel, and later on and whack that thing off if it goes out and it's not a change in brand.
Right.
That's
So-
why I put the spaceship.
When
on
you
there.
talk to other people, what did they say?
It was really again, I'm so candid. You ask me a question, I'm going to answer it.
Yeah,
It was
please.
really a dividing line between age and class.
Okay.
Exactly what I've experienced.
So ones are like, it's great. And the
So
young
I
kids
would
were-
say that, from the older I've been here because my car broke down in 1968,
Ah.
right, and did that, that's what it was. To the more professional people who have either retired here or running their business here or taking advantage of the industry.
Yeah.
it was, yeah, it's kind of cute, but I have no idea where the hell it comes from.
Okay.
But it really fell right along age and class.
Yeah, I think there's an economic dividing line there, as you
And-
suggested as well.
And that's why I put in there with the just the like the silly symbol,
Yeah.
because it kind of paid, you know, this is where it's kind of funky, keep it, because I really agonized on putting it in.
Yeah. Well, and we can keep working on that. I
Yep.
do want to keep us moving.
Good.
That said, a couple questions, John. One of my questions, and as you're talking about depths of concrete and those sorts of things, I'm growing leery of this question, but if this were to be placed and needed to be moved in the future,
Unbolt it.
you just unbolt it and you just have some concrete in the ground.
Yep.
Okay.
Great.
Because I've wondered about
That's a
that
good question.
sidewalk question as well, Greg, in terms of future plans and as this area gets developed. I think there also could potentially be a more informational kiosk type thing on the other side of the street that would have to fall on Ronnie Anderson's property or current property, but there could be some development there.
And could
I
I just,
think-
quick question on that one?
Yeah.
Is the reason that you want to put it on the fire hydrant side because the other side is privately owned? I mean, because it is the
Yeah.
Amtrak station and they're going to be more foot traffic there.
That's what we had talked about, that we would put something over there, but it's owned by Ron.
Right.
And Ron will not, we
I mean, he
haven't
might
figured out how
rent
to-
us the space.
we don't own it at all.
Mike, let me rephrase the question. Is it prohibitive because it's privately owned, or is it somebody who doesn't want it there?
We could approach Ron with that if we decided that was a better location.
Okay.
I'm guessing we would have to pay a price to put it over.
You know,
Opposed to it though, Ron's.
The
pretty
thing I like
supportive
about
of
it, where across the street, is it stands alone. If you know, if
You like it in the
by train
Juniper on the other
station,
side?
you'd have to pull that existing piece that's there that functions kind of as shade, maybe as a signage. So eventually I could see moving it.
I mean, that's
Okay.
our first, when we first talked about this, we all agreed, I believe, that that was a better place for this sort of thing, but
Okay.
Down
we're
the
not,
road.
we're not pulling people over there, you know, like
Yeah, yeah.
that's not Fraser. We don't own it.
Okay. So that's one of the things I wanted to talk to you after the meeting.
Okay, sounds good.
That'd be cool if we did.
And we'll circle back to this when we're talking about district enhancements and just kind of where we want to spend our money. But before we let John go, did you guys want to take a few minutes and look at the bike sculpture or?
Sure.
Sure.
And while he's calling that up, you know, the way that is evolving, I think it is more in the signage category than it is the public art category. And so, at least from my perspective, the process that should go through would be, you know, commensurate with a public works type of thing versus the PAC. And so, I don't know if you're required to do a, you know, competitive bid process for something like that, but I could see that easily fitting there
Easily fitting
into the non-art category.
the non-art, okay. We can talk more about
Yeah,
that and
I
make sure
don't think
we're-
it's a big deal either way, but I remember when a certain Granby sculpture 4 years ago had me on the phone talking about how he didn't think that it was very public that we put these sculpture programs out there. And so we said, you know what, he's right.
Yeah.
And so we did. And all of a sudden we got a lot more representation from people in the community. So same reason.
So I really didn't, so I put up here, I believe this is a raw CAD drawing, so I apologize if it's not big full screen or whatnot. So I had done this, you know, we had some grant cuts, but I had been selected from a call for recreation district on the Front Range. And I had this design already through. I figured I would just make an old-fashioned cold call and say, gee, who's owning this bike park? Right? You know, what are we doing there? Right? So which is what I did. You know, I understand there was a bit of feedback from like, this doesn't look like a, you know, it looks too road bike or city bike or whatever, and, you know, and without getting into the weeds, one of the funny things, I've been a cyclist since I was 12. I started racing when I was 12. When I drew this up, I tried to draw because the request was for the other place was just for a you know, for a recreation district that had a bike facility. I tried to make this as nondescript as possible. So the front is actually supposed to be like a suspension fork, and the, you know, the handlebars are, you know, a flat bar like a mountain bike, and then the rear triangle was supposed to be like a full suspension bike, but yet it could also be this. So this is not set in stone. This was just an idea that I had. So if you guys are going to have something out there, I just think that it is a great opportunity to either have something there from the road. And again, when I create public art, my number one thing that I think of is how can I not upset people? Because we have become so polarized and we have become so tough, right? With opinions around public art, right? And that's why you'll notice if you look at my stuff that's in collections, you'll notice it's really up for interpretation a lot of times. So, you know, I thought this would be something neat to have up there. It would work. But there's tons that we could do or that could be done around this. And even if you are to go out and do a call, okay? So I'll speak from the perspective of having done a lot of calls. You know, regardless of whether you open the call or describe the call or tell the people what you want out of the artist, right? If you don't have a picture, a collective picture from your guys' head of what you want, nothing will be successful. So when I presented it, if there is things that, you know, this is a simple steel base, that's stainless steel up top. But if that's too modern, what do you guys want?
Yeah.
You know, if you want, again, it goes back to that question of, is this signage? Is this something to pique the interest? Or is it an art thing? So the last thing that I would put up before I take like any questions, like what would you like to see different in something like this, is the more, especially if you're going to have expressionist or impressionist style art, the more you make it a defined idea, the more chance you have for alienating or polarizing the populace.
Yeah, so in my professional experience, both as a corporate executive and as an artist, there's no way you can avoid pissing some people off, and I don't care. That's just inevitable. I hear you. It's a proportional thing. I love the idea of a artistic representation of cycling at our bike park. I think this easily could fit into that motif. And I think it is entirely consistent with the brand that Sarah's building for the town. So the idea I love. I think John is, you know, spot on that we would need to give some, you know, decent guidance as to what it is we'd want. The only thing that I would add is when I see this, I think it's substantial in scale. And I hope that's the case because I think this should be a big old bike sculpture that you can't miss.
That's 100% what I was hoping for, is something big.
So this is drawn. Beauty of doing real CAD. So that right there, the way this is drawn, and of course it can be scaled out, is 8 foot from bottom to top.
Cool.
My personal experience is you don't want to get much more than 10 to 12 foot because then it becomes really big. The reason I came up with this type of bicycle and making it all out of the same stainless tubing is because it's there, but it's not there. And it's hard to convey this with a animation or, you know, a thing that comes up. But it's when you do, what's called the concept of mauve, not to get all artistically thingy yet, but here, I'm waiting for this to load up. That's using negative space. Okay. It's a Japanese methodology. It's how they do their floral arrangements where you can have four flowers and it looks like it's 120, right? But having that be stainless and having it, you see through it. You're still seeing the mountains. It's not out of the way. It doesn't go through. Oh, come on.
So the leverage point seems vulnerable.
If a drunken idiot were to get up there.
Yes, which
and-
we have. We're
So-
known for drunken idiots.
I understand this.
Yeah, that would be something for us to consider in
So
the long run.
what is not drawn here? So this is steel. And again, steel is cheap comparatively from a long-term perspective, something like this. This is never going to go away in our lifetimes. Okay. With the shape of the oblast, the bottom, okay, you can't climb it.
Yeah.
It's up high enough, you can't get away from it. Again, this would be on a small concrete plinth,
Mhm.
okay, about 12 inches away from the size of it.
Okay.
Okay. This is slick, it's steel, it gets hot. You know, is somebody that is really determined going to do it? I'm sure they are.
Yeah.
But my point back to you was, when was the last time that the moose was messed with in Winter Park?
Okay. The
The
big
one outside the rendezvous center.
Yeah.
Yeah, a while back, probably. Way
Yeah.
back.
So this weld that would be here, this is the structural element down at the bottom.
Yeah.
That's going to be a good 6 to 8 inches of, you know, multi-pass welding.
Okay.
This will be joined here, would it bend if somebody got up there and jumped on it? Absolutely.
Mhm.
But that's why you create the concrete plinth around. That's why you have the base. And again, the base can be changed and shaped. The more angle you make of that, the less that it is. So in other words, the more you bring it out the distance.
And we could do some plantings around it to discourage
Yep.
people and
Yeah.
things
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah.
Or the sign, there could be a sign on it saying something that also will help, you know, like Fraser Bike Park or whatever down there on that.
Yeah.
People will not climb all over that probably then.
Uh,
Do we have any more questions for John? Because we do need to move on.
Nick, see, I had anything to say at all?
I have one last question for you, John. I know you and I talked a little bit about price ranges, but if we're considering these as part of what to do with our pot of money, can you give us a range that we're looking at? I know it depends on the exact size and
Yeah, it does, and it depends on you know, the commodities market is in flux right now due to
Yep.
our now. So, you know, that changes around.
I feel like I had like 8 in my head from when we talked before. Is that
no.
Not for the bike. There's no way.
Yeah, the bike itself would be that. But you can probably get this done 15 to 20 from
What's
a
it?
design build perspective.
What's my point of view? I think the first sculpture is much more a priority for the
It
DDA.
is, yeah.
And I would,
circle back to that conversation? I just want to have the
Okay.
prices
yeah.
when we have that
Okay, yeah,
conversation.
yeah.
How about that?
but
first
I think this
sculpture?
should totally get done.
But
I think
this
it's
is
sweet.
down.
Yeah.
And we can talk about whether it's the role of the DDA or,
Whoever
you know,
pays
maybe
for
the public
naming
arts
rights on
wants
the
to do
park or
it. Right.
something.
Yeah.
Town should come in and help with that.
And how about the
Yeah.
Amtrak sculpture
So on the Amtrak thingy,
ballpark?
you know, I think you're under 15. I think you're under 15.
Huh, that'd be amazing.
I
Guessing 30.
think,
Yeah.
but that depends on how we look to make it, right? So, what I would, if there is interest, I am more than willing to do, because the challenge with this one, and it's not screen sharing. So how do I get over here? I'm a WebEx guy. I don't, and
Click
and
on share.
change my
I haven't been
screen.
on-
WebEx?
It's in forever.
That's still.
It is a big thing. It depends on who you're working with. So
Totally,
it depends
yeah.
on
No,
which
it was
region.
everything, and then I have
Teams,
to run.
yeah, it really depends on whether, I use Teams more than I do anything else.
Yeah.
But Teams and I are currently having an argument with licensing.
Oh, boy.
So,
Yeah.
so
So there's that green share in the middle at the bottom of your
it should be
screen.
screening
It's-
everything.
it's on.
It's going now. So there has to be a bearing trunnion system inside here. I have to do math, which I haven't done yet, to
Okay.
come up with
Yeah.
the construction. But again, I don't want to think, I don't want you guys to think that everything I sell is around 20 grand, right? But I think you're in the, an
I think that's
overall
pretty
budget,
low.
of
That's-
20 to 25, depending on concrete, everything else. I mean, these things unfortunately cost a lot of, now,
Sure.
here's the cool thing. If you guys really want, I can probably, if we are flexible with some of the dimensions, we can use some reclaimed steel, actual reclaimed steel on this, right? We're not paying for new. We're not paying, we're not buying 30-foot sticks of steel to make the tubing, right, at the bottom. That will substantially lower the cost, but the cost is in the labor of the design, the build, and in that area. But I think that this could easily get done. I think this can get done for 15.
15 all inclusive or your part? Your part.
Bringing it in,
Yeah.
putting it down, you've got a few grand for concrete and you got a few grand for permitting. I think is what you're looking at. If you're asking me from my personal experience.
And Sarah, you or else should know that the town has funded other sculptures in the community in recent years in that same price range.
Okay.
So there's pathways beyond just the DDA.
What's our
Yeah.
budget this year of money to spend?
That's on,
Yeah.
coming up on our agenda, but we have about 40,000 total district enhancements. I think we put in 20,000, which I would put this into.
Yeah,
And for the most part, we haven't spent that, so.
because I think it'd be cool to get like a bid for this with 5 or 10 locations where we could do fixed versions of the spindles and just fund that, and
Yeah.
we'd do something quickly. People would love it.
Right.
I think people would love it.
Dude, that would be way cool.
Yeah.
And maybe something, maybe off the bottom,
like
some
smaller.
fixed ones that just show Highway 40.
Yeah.
Restrooms.
See
Basically,
that
so many
one.
people get off that train and they
I think
just
there's a
clueless and
need
hit
for
bus
that,
stop.
but
But not on that,
No,
yeah.
that, okay.
I think there's a,
wouldn't.
but I think we have to have that,
Yeah, we
Freestanding
do.
kiosk.
that stuff too. for
Yeah.
sure.
And again, we'll have that wayfinding report. I know they presented kind of the preliminary to the governance body. I'm hoping to have the chamber come and present that to this group
Yeah.
once they
So
feel like they
the
can.
one thing real quick on that. So if you just want to look at this with the hiker, right? This guy here, if we're talking just straight fabrication work, right? It's a couple $100,
Yeah.
per, right? Cause it's gonna get, it depends on what we're looking at. If it's me, I'm probably gonna water jet that because I'm gonna want it to be nice and clean and really simple, right? So that makes it a little bit more expensive. But, water jetting those out on you're probably looking at a couple $100 per, depending on size, right? But, and with no finish and no paint, no anything else, no maintenance. That's, and
That's
then
good.
that can
That's
be
what we want.
welded to whatever
Yeah.
you decide to do later from a different type of signage, or just
I think that'd
don't
be
buy
sweet.
aluminum sign posts.
No aluminum.
Got it.
And I
So-
think there's considerations if you want that more kind of sophisticated steel or rust look, or if we want more of a pop of color that maybe is more visible from the train
I think
as it's
that's
coming through town.
Pops of color for this type of size, probably add another $200.
Or just, I know stainless is a lot harder to work with, isn't it?
Uh,
No, it's
you-
not? Good. So what about stainless?
You
Because
lose it. You
it doesn't
don't see it.
rust. What's that?
it's shiny.
You don't
It's
see
like a
it.
mirror.
You don't see it.
No,
I
because
really
it's
don't see
bright,
it.
it's reflective,
color
it causes
too, though.
glare. That
Oh.
what you see is the negative space of whatever the signage that is there.
Okay.
So you want to do color or you want to do natural?
And I say color because I think things, if you look at the sculptures that we currently have in town, the ones that are very natural colored, you don't see them very well, but the ones with color do pop and they catch your eye.
Welcome to
I feel
my
like there
world.
is a very big difference there. You're talking about you want that visibility. I don't know that the whole thing needs to be colored, but I feel like it needs some pops of color to really catch your attention.
The only place that
Long-
the rusted metal sculpture that I do really moves is in New Mexico, Arizona, Palm Springs.
Yeah,
That
you do a lot in Santa Fe, don't you? Yeah, and that weather's well.
yeah, yeah. But so that's a quick, to answer your question. So that adds complex. This, if you're asking I think I think it being orange would be fantastic, right? I think being natural steel would be fantastic. It just depends on what you guys want for the aesthetic of the going through and what the master plan looks like, right?
Right. And if you look at the ones around like the Lions Ponds area, I quite like them, but they very much blend into the natural environment. Whereas I
You're-
feel like here having a pop so it catches people's eye would make sense, but
And
we can definitely keep
yeah,
having that
what I would add to
conversation.
you, Sarah, is if you're on foot or on, on a bicycle, you're gonna see rusted metal.
Yep.
Because if you're close or whatever, if you're wanting something to be seen from a distance, I hate saying this in a recorded session, Steve's right. It's gonna
Hmm.
blend into the background, you're never gonna see it,
Right.
right? But if you're talking about like what's right in front of you, rusted, the patina is what we call it in the fancy world.
Hmm.
The patina look is it'll be fine.
Yeah.
If you want it to be visible from afar, put color on it.
Yeah, I mean, you just have to take into account that, people in Greg's building over there, their windows face that direction. It just depends on what you want, because if it's for the people on Amtrak, they're getting off and they're standing there, they're gonna see a 15-foot tall statue, But do you want to see it from a mile away? I don't know. That's up to you
No.
guys.
Yeah, I don't know that you would.
I don't.
fool with-
No. Okay.
Cool.
We're out
Okay,
of time.
cool. Yeah, let's move on. John, thanks so much
Thank
for
you.
coming.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks, John. We'll
And
circle
also,
back.
Appreciate you, brother.
Thank you. As an artist, I know that there's an investment in time and creativity in coming up with these, so
Yes.
thank you for that.
I think the difference is I run a business.
Yeah.
This is not, I mean, I wish I could do this type of thing. This is sales. Just being candid, right? And I know we're recorded and all that, but if you don't invest in communication and dialogue, then it's never good. And that's what this is. Now, if it were just me doing a call, yeah, you get my submission and it's out of here, right? But no, I live here and I want you guys to continue to be the lead. I think it is just great. I want you to bleed over into Granby and I want you to bleed over into Winter Park. So, thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks, John.
Thank you.
Cool. So next we have our town comprehensive plan and downtown development, continued destruction, comp plan follow-up, Elk Creek Trail possibilities, stormwater, etc.
Great. So I asked Garrett to join us after Cushing Terrell presented the comp plan last time around. And we can just talk about a couple high-level things and then some of the feedback and ideas that you all had suggested. I know Perks had talked a bit about, gosh, now is it Elk Creek? Is that the one that?
Oh,
Creek?
Elk Creek.
Okay.
Yeah.
And some possibilities along that moving forward in the future. And then also just wanted to kind of revisit this downtown conceptual in terms of where you guys might want to focus efforts in the future and just kind of getting some feedback.
Yeah, thanks, Sarah. So Garrett Scott, town planner. Recognizing that a lot of the folks here in the room weren't at June's DDA meeting, I did just kind of want to briefly go over the presentation that our consultant, Cushing Terrell, gave on a couple elements in the comprehensive plan specifically related to the downtown area. So just starting with this is our downtown vision plan, focuses on the Clayton Court area, really in between Highway 40 and the Fraser River. One thing that I wanted to emphasize, though, if I can fly around and show a different map, that vision plan that we were looking at really just encompasses this kind of darker shape here, whereas the entire DDA boundary covers this area in orange. So really, I think from staff's perspective, when we're talking about downtown in terms of our comp plan and various goals, strategies, and actions, what we're really talking about is this entire orange area, not just the kind of focus area of Clayton Court.
Sure.
So with that in mind, some of the discussion that was had in June around some of those goals, strategies, and actions that I wanted to just quickly follow up on. I believe Parks brought up a connection, a trail connection on Elk Creek through the DDA area, connecting over to the Fraser Valley Murdoch's shopping center. That is something that will absolutely be incorporated as a recommendation in the comp plan. It is something that we could require based on our current town code with regards to trails. Really, though, the only privately held property that is likely to develop along that Elk Creek area is the Meyer Lot 1 parcel, which is outside of the DDA boundary. But certainly the town could take the initiative to establish a trail along Elk Creek within the DDA boundary. Are there any comments, questions, thoughts on that?
Does the town code require the developer to then finish the trail in that plot?
Yes, and I think any development application on that property, the town would require a trail along Elk Creek. So this is a section of the code that would enforce that. The text may be a little bit small, but one of the things I want to point out under this location requirements, trails parallel to water courses is specifically called out. So certainly Elk Creek would fall under that. And we would require that trails be constructed by the applicant and have a trail easement over them so that there's public access. So,
Okay.
For Parks parcel,
yes.
and then the town, he owns the one to the north that kind of follows that as well, right?
Yeah, so looking at the other parcels on the north side in between Elk Creek Drive and Highway 40,
Yeah,
there's this small piece here, which is owned by the town.
yeah, but
And
the
then,
creek piece, yeah.
yeah, this larger parcel here is actually owned by the Fraser Valley Center,
Oh, okay.
which owns Murdoch's. So the town would likely look to partner with them to construct a trail through there.
And did Clark have a trail on his application for Meyer Lot?
I don't believe so, and at this point, it's simply a sketch plan
Oh, I
that
thought he
we've
further along.
received for this property. So still subject to change. It's just in the high level feedback and evaluation stage, not any approval stage at this point.
Right. And I think, logistically speaking, it would be great to kind of come at have it, like where the bank is kind of where it would cross and meet up to the Fraser Trail. So it's kind of like a loop through there and back. So it's like uh, kind of beautification type thing. And then also people could walk not along the highway and kind of get that nature walk type vibe, but still get places quickly.
Yeah, absolutely. So
So-
a couple points on that. As Sarah mentioned earlier in the meeting, CDOT is finalizing their design for the Highway 40 expansion. One of the things that the town is advocating for with the overpass of Elk Creek is when that gets reconstructed as part of that expansion, having enough clearance so that a trail could go underneath Highway 40
Right.
following Elk Creek. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So that way you have a grade separated crossing of
Mhm.
Highway 40 that connects to the Fraser River Trail and provides just better connectivity between some of the areas to the south to the north. Yeah.
And it's also that way then feeding into kind of where the visitor center is now, right? Is that what we're calling it? The little park there.
Trails Alliance.
Yeah. And the Trails Alliance, and then into Clayton Court So it's connecting the downtown of Clayton Court to the downtown, to the other side of our downtown district, and it's seamless.
Yeah, absolutely.
Cool.
Um,
I think it would be really pretty as well.
yeah. One other thing that I wanted to mention with regards to the Murdochs and Safeway centers, we have added some language into the downtown recommendations, and I'll zoom in on it here. Kind of that gray highlight there, recognizing that these, shopping centers are within the DDA area, and they are several decades old. In the case of the Murdoch Center, it was built in the mid 80s. And thinking about it's already 40 years old, the life of the DDA is 30 years plus potential extensions. These are areas that could redevelop in the life of the DDA, certainly, given the age of these shopping centers and kind of the style of development that they're built in, more auto-centric, really kind of a suburban type of commercial development. And in more urban contexts throughout the country, these types of developments are redeveloping with more infill, more urban style development. And I think that's something that we certainly would like to encourage for these areas when it's appropriate, thinking about this long lifespan of the DDA. So when that happens, certainly we want those areas to be even more integrated into the broader downtown Clayton Court area than kind of what you just mentioned, parks with the things like trail connections and non-motorized connectivity, certainly.
And so these sort of trails will then promote that kind of movement, right?
Certainly.
And then also I think it promotes parking in one area and walking,
Mhm.
and it's more I think acceptable to the uh tourist that's coming or the local that is getting coffee over on this side of town and wants to walk to that side of town. I think it feels less of a walk that way. When you're on the highway, it's like, well, I'll just get in my car and drive. And we want to promote parking and leaving your car somewhere, right? Being more so on foot and really experiencing this town and what we offer.
Totally.
And I think in that regard, looking at and encouraging more shared parking models, because kind of traditional parking, you park at Murdoch's if you're shopping at Murdoch's or getting your coffee,
Yeah.
something in that center, and you're technically not supposed to be leaving your car there, right? That space is for their next customer. But then you miss out on spending time elsewhere in downtown. So I think you're right. Most people then just get in their car and leave. Rather have that walkability and promote people like hanging out, spending a couple hours.
Right, and that's
Seeing
like
different
other
businesses.
towns, like if I brought up Steamboat before, Estes, if you go to Steamboat, you park in front of a coffee shop, you leave your car there and you walk all throughout Steamboat's downtown. Even if you get on that back trail by the river and kind of go around versus being on the highway, you really leave your car wherever it is, no matter what business it's in front of. Also, in Estes, you do the exact same thing. So we're really one of those unique towns that's working on our parking here, and the idea of being shared, we do have that thing in our heads that says if you park in front of my business, you better be buying something. And it's like, well, really, someone this way, someone could be parking over by, Birdie Lounge, but still shopping in Murdoch's. It's not uncommon in other towns to see people walking with their bags
You
a
know,
half a mile.
perhaps there's a role for the DDA there in the future
Yeah.
because, part of it is the Murdoch's folks. I'm gonna keep calling them the Murdoch folks, the Fraser Valley Center. Is that what it is? They pay to maintain that parking lot and they're within their rights to kind of do that. But I think there's a lot of benefits to a different model where you park once, spend your time in town, and then leave.
Well, and if it's showing that they're having the same amount of business and nothing's being hurt, then I don't think that anyone's going to be object to that.
Yeah.
I'm sure there was this type of conversation in Steamboat at one point too,
Yep.
or Estes, because those shops are right next to each other. And half of them are the same stuff. It's like taffy shop, ice cream, taffy, ice cream. So
No shortage of tap.
Somehow they survive.
Yeah.
Right? So,
Sugar's how we survive.
yeah, totally.
Anything else, Garrett, that you wanted to highlight or?
I guess a couple things. Just this presentation is in the meeting packet from June. It has the, kind of downtown vision statement and then various goals, strategies, and actions related to downtown. If anyone here wants to look at them in more detail and talk through them, we can certainly do that. I will note that these all this text, along with kind of the other comp plan focus areas, items specific to land use, to transportation, to open space, arts and culture, et cetera. Those will be shared with the public in a draft stage at the end of this month. We're having an open house on July 30th. So that will be, the public's opportunity as well to review some of these vision and goal statements and provide feedback before they're finalized. But certainly, as the DDA board, we want your input on, the downtown component and really all components of the comprehensive plans.
And please do encourage other businesses, friends, residents to attend those sessions if they're able. They will also be at Picnic in the Park on the 29th, correct? Yeah. Just kind of getting feedback from the public on the different visions that are presented in the comprehensive plan at this stage. And then that open house on the 30th. Is that at the rec center again?
Yes, it'll be at the rec center from 4 to 7 p.m. So
Yeah.
we'll have some advertising going out within the next week to advertise that more broadly.
And I can send these dates out in an email as well, but please do share and just encourage people to participate. The more people we get participating, just the higher, the higher the community engagement is and the better informed the plan is to represent everybody.
When we walked through Mural Park last meeting, we kind of discussed some functional sculptures there, like instruments, and then also just wood chips and what's more inviting. And you guys have put up shade sails there.
Yeah, so that I wanted to touch on as part of this kind of district enhancement.
Okay.
Garrett, would you mind pulling that sketch back up?
Sure.
Actually, I don't know how well Mural Park is shown on that. Maybe it'd be better if I pull up Google Maps.
It's okay. As far as the concept plan, Mural Park is down where my cursor is, kind of
Okay.
center side of the screen. So currently the concept plan is kind of silent on the future of Mural Park, I would argue, but doesn't broadly envision it remaining as open space. And I know there are questions on, well, what does this enhanced open space look like?
Yeah, so Mural Park. I was really excited to have the DDA try to activate Mural Park, and it had some very surface level quick conversations with town staff about this. The direction I have since received is that Mural Park just kind of still hangs in the balance. Mural Park was not meant to be a permanent park. It was a property, a lot that the town owned, and it seemed to make sense if we were not developing it or doing something with it immediately to make use of it in the short term. So it became Mural Park. Sarah Wick had written a grant and gotten some money to do what was done with it, put down the concrete. There's a nice statue there to try to. Initially, they were holding the farmers markets, which became the artisan bazaars. I would like to know if the GDA would like to try to pursue this. Ultimately, if we do, I think it's a conversation that we need to have more in depth with the Board of Trustees in terms of getting their approval. As has happened, there was an attempted land swap because it had been a public park. It had to go to the voters in order to do that. So that's when we were working with out west, trying to swap the land they had on the river next to the art center with that plot of land to provide more green space and more space for the art center outdoor amphitheater along the river. So that was a ballot measure. It did narrowly fail, for better or for worse. And so with plans moving forward, whether or not that remains a park or whether or not there's some other opportunities for potential land swaps or development. If you look at this current sketch, okay, that's not a touch screen. That whole plaza area, if that were to be developed, and granted, this is a vision, it may or may not happen. There's private property that is in the middle of that plaza stretch. I believe right now it passes through Denver Health. There could be opportunities to be swapping other properties that the town owns for some of those properties. The town did recently buy the little cabin-like structure that's next to the log cabin in between the EMS building that EMS is trying to relocate, so that that whole block could potentially be a development at some point. You know, maybe Denver Health would want to move into there, and then we could do this plaza area. So that kind of just raises that question of Mural Park's future. There's some concern that if we continue to develop it with amenities, it makes it difficult to then swap out that land because then it is a park. But if we're not swapping it out, then I think it would be nice to enhance it and have it be a more activated park.
So if it's 3 to 5, how far out are we from a land swap? Is that next year? Is it 5 years away? Do we have any idea?
I would not say it's next year.
Because if it wasn't next year and it was multiple years, we could still put things there that are movable to the next location.
I agree. And I
Instruments are able to be unbolted, sculptures can be unbolted. Also, if you had something like turf involved in there, you can move it.
Yep, I think it's more the idea that if the public becomes attached to it as a park, it makes it difficult for the town to move it.
Because
So it's a
It has to go to the
conversation.
voters.
Okay, I see.
Because I agree with you. I always had the same thought, like,
Yeah.
well, if we
I
do
think
things
so
like
as
musical
well.
instruments
Yeah.
that maybe they're moved to Clayton Court or somewhere else, then it's not a loss. So I think it's just a conversation that we need to have with the trustees and get their approval before we do
Mm.
anything permanent. When we started talking about kind of activation of Mural Park, the idea that I had presented to the rec district was if they wanted to partner on more kind of pop-up temporary things. And unfortunately, it took a while for them to come back and they weren't able to make that first DDA meeting. And now we're in the middle of summer. And what they had suggested was more, yes, you can move them, but semi-permanent structures.
Is the legal opinion that you could call it the mural parking lot and then trade it?
Yeah.
That's what you should do. So you can't backtrack.
Yeah.
The other possibility that I'll throw out there is a
Ink.
real possibility is the Board of Trustees is looking at the process of going home rule. And I think it's fairly likely that the board will move in that direction. I think we've landed on, we're kind of maxed out in terms of staff capacity to do that for this upcoming election in November. We may be looking at the following year. But if we were to move to home rule, then we're not necessarily tied to taking that to the voters, depending on that home charter. So there's some things that could be happening. I would say not next year, probably not the following year, but maybe within 5 years. Don't quote me on that. So I'm not against activating it. I think we've maybe missed the boat for this summer in terms of those sorts of things. But if that's something the DDA wants to focus on, I think that's a conversation we want to have with the Board of Trustees as we're shaping this year's budget. And if they're on board with that, I think that'd be a great project to look at, maybe taking the time to really plan out. Do we want turf? Do we want grass? What does that look like? Do we want those musical instruments? And having that kind of well planned and in the budget and ready to go next spring. So when the snow melts, we can make that all happen.
And there are sunshades, right?
Yes.
Already,
Like
yeah.
Sunshades there that kind of activate it and catch
Yeah.
people's eye.
Yeah.
Well, the thing is that it's like at a 25% activation, and so it doesn't look great because we're sitting here going, maybe come over here, maybe don't.
I
And then at the
totally
same
agree.
time, we're going, well, maybe we'll do a farmer's market. If you put a farmer's market in there for 5 years, you think people are going to be attached to that little park? They're going to be attached to that farmer's market 10 times, tenfold that, because they're actually getting something every week from that. It's like, oh, I'm going to go get my Palisade peaches from there or whatever. And at this point, you have Palisade peaches up on the dirt parking lot next to the liquor store. And that's where they're doing that. So either give them a place or don't. And I feel like, that's a great place to bring people downtown, or just make the land swap and start right away and say, we're not don't go over there, you know?
And I'm guessing Palisade Beaches
have
likes
to-
being on the highway, because that's where they get a lot of their traffic. But no, your point's well taken. I totally agree. Right now, it's just in this limbo, so it's a park, but not a
If
great
it-
park.
If it were to go back to a swap though, does the DDA have the same limitation the town had on promoting the swap? Because I know that was a big issue when that happened was the opposing sides, one was getting out
Yes.
more and talking about it than the pro side and
Yeah.
like,
Honestly,
if
Greg,
we have a good
yeah.
idea, let's just support it ahead of time because we just didn't.
I
And
think
even
there's
those
a lot of
would have
lessons
supported
learned.
it.
Didn't know.
I don't think I don't think there's a critical mass attached to that park. I
I
think
agree.
if
Not
there's a
yet.
good idea,
Yeah.
people will get behind
And
it.
I also, Antoinette, not to be argumentative, but when did we go to the public to ask them to make that a park? We just did it.
So
The swap was
we never,
after that.
yeah, in the statutes basically state that because we called it a park, it was
Therefore, it's,
basically made it a park,
Got
and
it.
that's why it had to go to the voters.
And is it even specific to park or just a public use? There, I don't remember the exact statute language.
I had the conversation, I was like, are we sure that this
Yeah, yeah.
needs to go to the voters? But that's what the attorney said, so that's what we did.
but that would, I mean, calling it a park was something that happened before the land swap ballot.
Yeah.
But that's why it had to go to the ballot, because it had been used as a
And
park
so
space.
effectively, it's like an eminent domain, no, that's wrong comparison, but once we call it that, it becomes that. Got it. Thank you.
Or if you use it as that, officially it is still never
Yeah.
been named
But
anything.
like, I think in the example of the plaza, hey, if we trade this wood chip parking lot for this lot, we get this beautiful plaza. I
Yeah.
think it was contentious because that was gonna build it into townhomes with parking.
Yeah, yeah.
Right.
And so that was easy to get behind as no. It's like, all right, well, this is gonna actually be a built activated
Yeah.
space.
So if
Obviously,
we wanted
better
to make it a
connection for
parking
the
structure,
town.
would have to go to
Yeah,
the citizens.
I think
Now-
there's a lot more public benefit
And there's not.
in that plaza concept that wouldn't face a lot of pushback. In that
Got it.
So you're saying it would be better as not like a land swap?
I don't think the public would push back on a land swap if it meant achieving that plaza.
Mhm.
Whereas before it was like maybe open space, maybe amphitheater, not super clearly communicated for what it would be for
Right.
the art center.
Mhm.
And I think like if it was a goal of the town or of ours to make something happen with swapping that, we could communicate it. Not
So-
Go back to
you're-
your
so
question.
like I don't think losing the swap last time,
Yeah.
not like I don't think that truly represents people's opinion of
No, it
what
doesn't.
the town could do. with
Because they
it.
didn't know what we were swapping for.
Exactly.
They had no idea.
And,
So if it's
and
like,
the central issue there was parking.
Yeah.
right.
So.
So if you had a sketch, you're like, we're swapping to get this, and it's like a visual, they're gonna be way more behind that versus like, yeah, we want to swap for that piece of land that we have no idea what we're gonna do with.
Could I just ask one other question on this?
Yep.
Would it be in that scenario, can the DDA take a position on that?
Yes.
So that would
Um,
help. If
that would
we-
help.
We would be able as a DDA to say we favor this change.
Yeah.
I would go back
But-
and reread everything carefully to make sure I was giving you appropriate direction, but my understanding is yes, you could. I think there were a lot of lessons learned. I think just with the timing, it ended up being really rushed.
Yeah.
The developer took flack that the town had asked the developer to do it, but the
Yeah.
town was very much like, we need to be neutral, we need to be neutral, we
came
need to be
across as-
neutral. And we learned some lessons that we applied when we took the DDA to the voters, honestly, in terms of being able to have promotion beforehand and being able to just present positives and negatives, but to give out information. Because I agree, I don't think most voters knew what they were voting for, and there was some strong voices that wanted the park. There was parking there that was available, and wanted that parking. So,
19 public.
that is all to say, I think you're right. I think if we can package it nicely and if we're getting something for the plaza, I'm not saying that exactly that is what would happen, but that's one possibility that we could craft that story and that information and
Mhm.
go about it better than
Yeah.
what happened last time.
I think the other thing is too, if it's then developed, they're worried about blocking views and stuff like that, right? Because
Yeah.
right now it's just leaving it open.
Yeah. I mean, you have to have something of value like that Denver Health site. You're gonna have to have a
Yeah.
developable, expensive, potentially
Yeah.
valuable lot to go trade with.
Okay.
So I
All
think
right.
that Mural Park lot is that the town currently owns. The one over by the railroad is somewhat there too, I would say, the house, but
Yeah. Well, why don't we go ahead? I'm gonna pull up our budget if that works for everybody, and we can kind of talk about where we're at. And
So we didn't have anything on stormwater because we don't have our expert here right now, right?
yes, since Tiffany's not here, would you guys like to talk about stormwater?
No.
No.
Okay.
no.
Tiffany did have some feedback on, she's continued to push forward, which I think would be great, more green infrastructure around stormwater. As I told Tiffany just in our conversation after the last meeting, Clayton Court and like St. Louis Landing, I mean, they are pretty, both in terms of what's in the streets and just development, are pretty dense. And so even though the green infrastructure doesn't take up that much space, there's still just Clayton Court. We are trying to fit a lot in and working with property owners to get more easement as it is. So I think it was more difficult to make that happen. But looking forward elsewhere in town, I think it makes a lot of sense to look at more green stormwater design infrastructure.
Yeah, she should be tied into the Clayton Court stuff because there's no storm infrastructure. It's all surface drain. And we're gonna hit that with phase 3 of the check site because that'll be over half acre. I don't know what we're gonna do there.
But yeah, I mean, if you could make it work there.
I don't know if that's viable. I'll have to, yeah, for another time.
Yeah.
Again, we need Tiffany here for that, for all of this.
Forget Garrett.
So let's go ahead and take a look at our budget, and then we can circle back to both the sculpture conversation and the mural park in terms of what the DDA would like to kind of focus on. So in terms of our draft budget, this is the one that we revised when we found out we were getting less money than we thought we had last year. But we were expecting to get about 36,900 in tax revenue, and then we had 6,400 about that was rolling over from the seed money that we got from the Board of Trustees from the previous year. So that left us or gave us a planned budget of about 43,000. We have received 32,571 thus far in tax revenues. That is actually a total amount that we've gotten of about 34,000, but then they've taken a treasurer's fee. I do plan to circle back with Grand County and just kind of verify how they're calculating their treasurer's fee. It is common that they take a treasurer's fee. This seems to be about 5%. Troy said he's typically seen about 1.5% for DDAs. They take a treasurer's fee from like the town property tax as well, but it doesn't seem to be quite as high percentage wise. That said, I know the DDA has been a good amount of work for them to kind of parse that out. But I just want to get some clarification because they had not originally presented how they were calculating that. So I'll work on that and bring that back to folks. But I want to focus more on
It's the front door.
expenditures. So thus far, we've spent $370 on lodging. That was for the DCI in the game conference. Our attendance at that was free because we had a VIP membership, and only one person went, which was myself. Professional services, this is largely or has entirely been for Troy, largely with that financial investment policy, and then just continuing to work through the county assessor and their calculations, making sure that they were in line with what we thought we should be getting for the DDA. We talked about possibly sponsoring one of the selfie stands that Sarah Wick had ordered. And those were actually done by John. Those are about $1,000 a pop. It looks like the locations that they are currently looking at, they still haven't been installed, are not in the downtown area. There is one that they're looking at in the Lions Ponds, which would fall within the district if we want to put the DDA's name on that one. we could do that. I know there was some interest in putting one by the train station. Sarah and Joe McDonald went out and looked at different locations and didn't think there was a suitable spot. They do have to like attach them with concrete. So I think that's something we could see how these ones go and if we want any more in the future of maybe looking at actually having them in the downtown area. But right now they are planned to kind of be at the Lions Ponds. Gosh, I just talked to Sarah about where the other two were and I can't remember.
It would seem if we could
On the
ever
Fraser
figure
River
out
Trail.
how to get something in front of Safeway, that, I mean, it's the highest foot traffic place in the entire town.
Yeah.
Well, and these are just they're wood. You can look at them in Sarah's office on the
know.
way out. But yeah, finding a scenic
Yep.
ground where
I mean,
people.
I felt for years we could take one of the mural festival murals, put it there, put a Fraser logo over it. You'd get a zillion selfies out of that. And
Yeah.
it's covered, so.
Yep. And then our Simple Coffee DDA event back in February was a whopping $67. And then we do have our event coming up August. What is that? August 4th? No, this is the DDA trash pickup, followed by one, this can be a topic of discussion if we want to do a beer to anybody or beverage for anybody that shows up, or if we make them pick up trash to get their beverage. But I think we finalized at our last DDA meeting that we would do August 4th from 4 to 5. Anyone that wants to come help pick up trash with the DDA, it'll be right after Mural Fest weekend and before Revel in the Park. So it seemed like since we missed our spring trash pickup, although Katie Souls organized her own, thank you, Katie.
You're welcome.
That this might just kind of be a good time to do it kind of late summer between those two different downtown events.
And on that, you're still focusing around the Safeway Center and Highway 40.
I think we decided with Mural Fest to do it around where the traffic for Mural Fest would be. So in this downtown area.
Okay, downtown's pretty damn clean. I'm here to tell you.
Well, we were wondering if after everybody was moving through with the murals,
Okay,
though,
gotcha.
that with the
Okay.
idea.
Yeah, that's fine. And
Yeah,
that'd be
and
easy.
then I think it would make sense to look at Safeway next time around, and then we could
Yeah.
do Safeway followed by Vicious, but this time doing downtown followed by Fraser River Beer Company from 5 to 6. But that is all to say we have spent not a crazy amount of money. In terms of what is budgeted, we did have 20,000 for district enhancements. So if we wanted to look at the, I don't know what to call it now, kinetic sculpture.
Yeah. So what does it
Signage.
take? So we do need to put out something to local artists. Is that correct?
Well, so
To other
my
artists.
understanding,
Yeah.
and this comes from the Public Arts Committee stuff. There's sort of a regulation requirement to not just be contracting with people for
Yeah.
substantial sums
Right.
of money without letting the public know that so they can have an opportunity to stick their hand up and ask for the work. So whether that's a public works thing or contracting thing or a public arts.
So how long is that going to take? I guess that's my question. I'm just
So
wondering.
I think in the
process.
search, there's a variety of ways for an artistic event to be done. You could do it through a thing called Cafe, which is an application online where you put it out to a community of artists, and that can take a few months to run its whole course, because then it
Okay.
gives artists like John or anybody else a chance to come up with a conceptual design, submit it, et cetera. I don't think that's necessary, frankly, particularly for the sign version. To me, that and even the bike park sculptural thing, the town has an extensive mailing list. We have a number of partners like Fraser Valley Arts who could then leverage or pile on that list. And if the town were to make a concerted effort to say, we have an opportunity, here's the opportunity, here's how you bid. I would think, you guys run your town, not me, but I would think that that would meet the test of being public about the opportunity and be quicker and cheaper.
Yeah.
I would say, I don't know that we'd have to even do that. I think we could just contract with John.
You really?
I mean, we're
So-
able to
Oh,
If
as a
it's signage,
DDA,
like, hey, that's the. cost
because
of
we're
the sign.
DDA and not the
We
town.
designed it, that's what we want. I mean, just from like I wouldn't think.
But it
we
is
have to
tax
go
dollar.
there.
I would just say, putting it out and allowing people to participate in the process creates more transparency, and I think that's always a good thing for
I
the
think-
town.
Yeah.
I think a 2-month, 3-month process seems like that's not necessary.
Yeah, and I do feel like transparency here is the key to keeping the DDA likable.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I feel like it's probably going to come down to John doing it anyways.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, just because it
Yeah, it's
is a
not
big
like
project.
A lot of artists can go build a 10-foot sculpture out of steel.
That's right.
So
And I mean, if it comes from out of town, you have to get it here. Transportation is big. He's already
John's from out of town, Denver, but still.
no, he's from
Granby.
Granby.
Oh, his shop is. in
He's a
Denver?
local.
Oh,
Yeah.
He
cool.
lives here full time.
Steve,
Oh,
were you
did-
suggesting
Was from
if we
Denver.
went through the
Explain that.
formal cafe process, that would take months, but we could also just locally email local artists.
Yeah.
And invite that
I-
participation and do it on a
So
reduced
what,
time.
but I would suggest, and again, I'm not your lawyer.
Yeah.
And
I will
this
check
is
in,
not
yeah.
what I would do if it were just my own business, but I'm trying to, accommodate what I've been told through the last 3 or 4 years. I would use the town's mailing list,
Yeah.
not the formal art thing.
Right.
And I would say we have 2 opportunities. One is around signage, one is around the bike park. We're open to submissions. Here's the details, much like John said. Here's some requirements for each of those sculptures. Here's the way you can submit your interest. We're looking for conceptual designs and expressions of interest by the following date. And then you go forward. And then what happens is we pick someone to partner with, and then you go deep with that person.
Yeah.
do you feel like doing that without, like for the bike park? I think in my mind, we should do the wayfinding sign thing. The bike park, I don't know if that should be a DDA
Yeah.
priority. Do you think there's an issue putting out that without a confirmed funding source?
I think I would like to just focus on the Amtrak signage first,
As a
and
DDA
then do
thing.
the bike.
Just like if we're gonna
Yeah.
put it out, like I think
Budget.
the bike park person, naming entity, whoever does it, the town should do that one.
Yeah, I would agree with you.
Okay.
And that's where I think there's an opportunity to partner with the Public Arts Committee budget.
Yeah,
Because we have a sculpture budget.
yeah.
Also, if you
So
think
if-
about it, in the past, like when Sarah tried to get the snow sculpture funded, that was $50,000. Okay, so when you put out a budget
Yeah.
of $10 to $20,000 for a steel sculpture, you're going to have very few entries on
Yeah.
that. So just the fact that he's willing to do that it's going to give him a good advantage
I mean,
anyways.
I hear you. We did a call for entries for sculptures
Okay.
3 years ago and had 75 entries.
That's pretty good. What was the budget?
As little as $1,000. John did one of those on a loan program, and as much as 10 to 12,000 for a permanent structure. Several of which you see in the park near where the bike thing is.
And this would have height, guidances and things like that.
Yeah.
Like, hey, we need it to be 12 foot tall so that people don't hang on it.
Yeah, or minimum size.
Yeah, minimum
those
size. Yeah,
criteria.
yeah.
So
Total
if we're gonna
specifications.
expedite this, I'm gonna because I feel like if we want to spend these dollars this year and get it committed, then we need to make this process happen.
Now.
J1. That's
Yep.
right away in control.
And I would say if the DDA, if we want our focus to be this train station.
Yeah.
Hoopla.
Yeah.
That I will work on doing the due diligence just to make sure based on kind of the measurements and stuff he threw out and thinking about future things like potential sidewalks, that this does seem to be an appropriate location. I can work with, get some input from Sarah Wick and Steve on putting out a call through the email to local artists.
And you have
And we
enough-
can try to do it, I think, by the fall.
Who's going to come up with the specifications though?
Well, we don't need the specs right now, do we?
You need a guidance spec if you're
Do
going to
it,
put out a
okay.
call. Yeah.
Yes, and I think I can work with Steve if you're willing to provide a little bit of guidance and
Sure.
Sarah based on just
Volunteer,
what
yeah.
we've done before and some of the information that John gave us.
Okay.
Does that sound good?
Cool.
Okay.
That'd be great.
So
Now,
it sounds
thank
like
you.
this is what we would like to move forward with for this year's budget. Do we want to put so we have 20,000 in the district enhancements. Um,
15? Should we put it?
sounds like
drop number at
he was
15?
saying he thought he could do that for 15 or under, but then it might be up to 20 once you add in the concrete and the platform and.
So do we want to say 10 to 15 for the artist to figure their part out? Because concrete's going to mostly be us anyways.
I don't know. I'd like to commit 20,000 to
That's half your
the
budget.
enhanced signage at Amtrak, whatever it takes. And maybe start it out with that.
Yeah,
The
and keep
sculpture.
in mind, you can,
And then-
as long as some of the work is done in the next fiscal year, you can split the payments and,
Yeah.
Yeah.
manage your budget that way.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay,
But
so
I
up
think
to
it's
20,000
appropriate.
total budget.
I think it would be appropriate in this communication to cite a range.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And, no artist who's doing this sort of thing expects a precise figure absent a design.
Yep.
So, there's work to be done. So
So-
if we put either a range or a cap, I think that's all you need.
A $20,000 cap, and then what if?
It sounds
Because
like
we
it would-
mentioned brand, right? Because we mentioned we want to do whatever goes over there, kind of along other trails, right? Like little fixed versions of it to make this brand look cool all the way around Fraser. Do we want to include the idea that that could happen?
Now, I would say if we want to look at that, I don't think that's a bad idea, but I think we're getting a little
Is that too much?
more integrated with that larger wayfinding and just kind of consulting with the wayfinding group and the board of trustees.
But yeah, so at the same time, Greg, you said you kind of envisioned if this was a sign, right? And it
Mhm.
was over here, there'd be like miniature fixed versions, right?
I think that'd be cool
It'd be
to have
cool.
the artistic, whatever we're gonna call it, spinning sign with the figures it has on it, have those figures repeated at those locations.
Yeah.
But then I think the wayfinding, I'm envisioning the wayfinding signs to be like you drive into, like downtown Littleton does a good job of it. Every street, it shows you what's on the side streets. So what's on the main streets you see, and then it shows, all right, this way there's XYZ business.
Mhm.
So that's what I'm envisioning, the wayfinding,
And that's
separate from this.
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
I would
yeah,
envision
yeah,
like,
totally.
if there's a sign that says cross country skiing here, just like at the trailhead, a little sign, like
Like the
that makes
little
it make sense to the.
So
symbol.
with the wayfinding group, will that be something that we would want to fund a portion of for signage with that? Do you think they're gonna be in a position to do that this year? Have something going?
I think the town will take the lead on that.
Okay. Good.
Yeah, there's been a few things where I was like, this would be a great DDA project, like the banners on 40. I had seen some in Greeley. I'm like, Fraser should do that. And it turned out Sarah had already ordered some. So I'm happy to let the town pay for some things that they're already looking to
Yeah.
do. But maybe the DDA could contribute towards a monument sign or, but I think.
I just think that those are involved. If you're gonna do across like the cross country or the bike, symbol, and that needs to be on the specs for this call.
Yeah.
Because if we're gonna reuse
So-
everything
so
over there
what
around
I
Fraser,
would suggest is we simply make one of the criteria that the winning contractor will be expected to coordinate with the new wayfinding protocols.
okay,
Since they're undetermined at this point, there's a project underway. Once we have that, we can go to John, say he wins it and say, hey, John, you know how you wanted to use that one particular symbol for cross-country skiing? Turns out the wayfinding group is going to use a slightly different one. Let's figure that out and use the same one.
yes, exactly. So it looks good.
Yeah. But for now, all you got to do is say that project's underway. You're going to collaborate with them.
And what I
We
can
hold the
do,
final decision on the design. So
I can check in with the wayfinding group and see if they see any conflict with, having these symbols in different places. And if that would mesh with what they're kind of looking at. I'll also see if they're ready maybe to come present to this group,
Mhm.
potentially at our August or September meeting. The hope was that we'd be able to kind of move forward with something this year that wouldn't step on any of those toes or mess up other ongoing projects, but could potentially stand kind of independently. So I'll just check with them on what they think about that synergy of having these symbols out and about. Because I do think that would make sense and would be a cool project. So if we look at the sculpture for there, I don't know what to call it. I feel like I've been told not to call it a sculpture, but now I don't want to necessarily call it a sign and invoke
Yeah,
greater
right.
permitting.
The sign.
Kinetic symbols.
Kinetic sign or kinetic sign.
We can continue the discussion about next year's budget and next year's projects at our next meeting. And hopefully we have more folks here and we are getting to just about 11 o'clock. But just to kind of circle back to that conversation about Mural Park, is that something that the group thinks we would like to pursue next year and should have that kind of larger conversation with the Board of Trustees to see if they are interested in providing approval to look at enhancements to Mural Park for next year?
I'm not. Frankly, I
Yeah.
I don't see us having a clarity of purpose around that.
Yeah.
If we
And-
had something specific in mind, fine.
Well, and some of the discussion at last meeting was doing the rec district came, Samantha, blanked on her name for a second.
Picture.
And what they had suggested doing, and I could pull up some pictures here that Park sent.
Yeah, I went to Estes last week and took pictures of things like that and things that we're trying to develop that are similar to what they already have over there. So thought it'd be cool.
I think I need to restart my computer. Everything's freezing up. But let me
That's
see if I can
okay.
pull this up. Of doing some sort of like musical instruments that like the kids could
Mm.
play that could be movable, but you like
Mhm.
bolt to the ground. So things like that that would just provide a bit more activity and enhancements. They also talked about possibly having like a little children or family garden, where there's a couple boxes and people could plant things and
Yeah, so they're
Come
called
back
like a
and-
sensory garden, and where it was like, kids are welcome to touch this, and it has like mint, and then it has like, carnations for like smell, and at the same time, then there's a little xylophone that's like fixed into the ground, and then they had rocks that were painted blue to look like a river and represent a river, and like, that's the kind of thing that is easy to do and easy to move.
Yeah.
Let's see. But again, we can also circle back to that
Yeah.
with the group as we're looking at next year's budget and plans and what we want to kind of prioritize and focus
I mean,
on.
all those things sound great. My only point is
Yeah.
we should have clarity amongst us.
We should.
What it is we're asking for before we.
Yeah.
I
say
totally
the-
agree.
the-
Right.
I guess the question is, do
Yeah.
we want to come up with that?
Well, and
and
can
approach?
we even ask for it because we need to know if the town is trying to swap that land, and if so, we need to know now so that we can get behind
The
that.
impression,
And the point is, we're not going to know now.
yeah, we don't know.
So
The impression I got from our board discussions was just leave it status quo. We need the parking for now, and then we'll see how it unfolds. That's kind of my impression.
So it's parking lot.
yeah, and I felt like it was a little mixed. Some
Yeah, it
people
was
were-
really mixed.
Back there.
It was very mixed, but
Penal.
that I see it also unfolding as Clayton Court
Yeah, we
unfolds.
call it a
That
parking
gets
lot, so
filled.
it's.
Yeah.
Okay.
The one thing though, from a budgetary thing that I would be very interested in seeing is a projection over time as to DDA revenues if we're going to accomplish some of the development we're talking about. Because I mean, let's face it, we're talking about, peanuts here. But a decade from now, that may not be. And
Yes.
that I think is important.
Didn't Trey do the
Yeah.
quote projection at least?
I can circle back with him on what we're looking at in the coming years, at least with plan development, and then maybe even some potential kind of infill opportunities and what that might look like. Because there's opportunities there for sure with larger money, and then there's also opportunities with potential, developers working with them to get them to put in amenities that we might like to see, and in return they get to keep some of that
Yeah.
increment
Yeah.
coming back to them.
I mean, as an example, just to use today's conversation, I could see us making a choice around this sign that is step one of 10 additional steps to enhance the brand and the signage in our community. And if we know we're going to hit $1 million in year 6, roughly, and I get this projection, then we build that strategy out versus just making these one-off choices.
Well, but like the plaza, for instance,
Yeah,
like say I
exactly.
owned that land. Hey, Greg, build a plaza here. okay, I won't pay property tax for 10 years.
Right,
And then you get the plaza.
right.
Like,
Exactly.
That's probably the power that,
100%.
that's how we have the power to do a $300,000 project right now.
Right.
Exactly.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's not so much
You're
the
not
money
gonna do
coming
that?
into us, but future revenues.
I may.
Yeah, you
Depends
might.
on the day.
Yeah, you guys might. I think you're a rare duo.
Is there anything else we need to talk about today or?
I
Yeah.
I did want to touch base on a couple updates. We are doing a bike park ribbon cutting. It looks like it's going to be July 22nd. They're actually breaking ground July 14th. So we are finalizing those details, but I hope to send out information this week. So that would likely be about a 4 p.m. ribbon cutting. And then we do just a little kind of celebration, have cake or something here or back at town hall or in the park next to town hall before picnic in the park. And then hopefully we'll have a kind of soft opening in the fall when they finish the work, and then a larger grand opening next spring. On that note, we are still looking for sponsorships, and I meant to grab some brochures, but I can grab them from my office real quick. If anybody would like to take some, I would love for you to just kind of share. If you're talking with different businesses that may be interested, please send them my way. We got Rendezvous Foundation signed on for a $25,000 sponsorship at the Trailblazer level, so they'll get their logo somewhere in the park. But we have different levels of participation. Cabin Works said they're interested in one of the levels. Vicious Cycle, I think, is potentially interested. Maybe Icebox Mountain Sports. So please do help share that information. We mentioned the comp plan will be a picnic in the park on the 29th and their open house on the 30th. I will send out a formal email with information, but just making sure you guys have August 4th on your calendars if you are available to participate and can help spread the word. So we'll do a DDA trash pickup from 4 to 5, and then just kind of a social hour at Fraser River Beer Company from 5 to 6. And then Revel in the Park, that's the weekend that the Chamber has been organizing. It's their new event. So most of it is music and events in Winter Park, but they were looking to try to activate downtown Fraser that Sunday morning. Is that Sunday the 9th? Do I have that right? So I know at a couple of meetings ago, people talked about some different ideas around that. Tiffany mentioned somebody that could do carriage rides and different things. But if you do know of any businesses that would like to participate either with activities or offering, discounted breakfast burrito or whatever, please send that the way of myself and or the chamber. And then I know have I think yoga class that they're looking to do first thing. I was going to see if maybe the rec district, since our other ideas are not kind of happening this year, if maybe they wanted to do just like a kids hour, be it a kids yoga or projects or something in the hour after in Mural Park, just to have some activation. I think the Fraser Artisan Bazaar is going on that weekend as well. That Rebecca Rudell has been organizing with the different businesses.
Is that here?
That will be they've been doing it kind of spread amongst some of the different businesses. So they have a table at like Autumn's Nest, the distillery, Simple Coffee. But yeah, just try to bring some business into downtown that weekend.
I think there's a conversation to be had about in the future of pairing that with the Mural Fest weekend. But there's pros and cons.
Yeah, I think some of the ideas, bringing business on different weekends as well. But yeah. And then obviously the Mural Fest is happening on the, what is that, 1st, 2nd, and 3rd? Yeah.
Painting on the 1st. Yep.
Yep. Any other updates from anybody else? Reminders?
Nope.
Cool.
Can we make motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Okay. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And turn off. You're gonna turn off your recording. When we do